We'll be taking questions now.
I know, it'll be completely impossible to respond to that. But I would be delighted to converse with anyone on any topic. And remember how sad I will feel if you just leave me up here stranded. Please.
Could you give me an example of where we're working with a client and going along those ideas and trying to get them to transport what they're doing? Do we work with anyone here?
Yeah, I mean, there's, it's across international development, it's across lines of service. One of the really interesting things, I've just been working on a pitch which we won with Derwent to do a number of real estate things, including actually the white collar factory in Shoreditch. And they're what is the argument we were making is they invest in the community in their real estate. They also do these super cool buildings. And we've of course got this stuff, the TIM project, which is in the total impact measurement, social, environmental, tax, you name it, of companies. And they concluded that they've got a huge economic benefit by doing this stuff, something like £600,000 from the different way that they do these buildings. Now what is really interesting is how can you link something that seems so intangible as that through to their business? Well, the short answer is it makes a huge difference because they're always competing for these prize properties with the councils. So when they put in a bid to the council that says, actually, we've got an urban regeneration effect, and it's quantifiable as this, it's a differentiator. And what you actually see is, it's very, very clear that when you do build a site that is built for people, not for cars, and it's really why I say the thing about the lift, something very different happens in the biochemistry of the city. So you've got these studies done, one by a guy called Courtwright, called the Livability Index, that if a street is near shops, if it's walkable, the value goes up in linear relationship to its walkability. But the next thing is if those shops are actually local shops, filled with local goods, not mass-produced goods from a huge mega chain store, it goes up by about another 17 to 20%. Not just that, but the people who go into those shops, this is according to an Amex study, spend 19% of their income in that local shop, as opposed to 6%. So suddenly, you've got a rewiring of the local economy where the residents are winning, the shopkeepers are winning, the council is winning. So if you can help make that case to a developer, and by the way, there's a study that just came out by a guy called Peabody, I think, that shows that GDP of cities is in direct proportion to actual face time, the amount of time that people spend together with each other, exchanging ideas, exchanging innovations. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Did it over-answer your question? Please.
Talks a lot about growth and massive small.
Yes.
But how do we start focusing on massive small and independent goals of growth? Getting us to a point where we're exceeding our capacity to survive these plans. So I guess what I'm getting at is massive small is great, but how do we focus on the big picture so that we don't all end up?
Okay, so that's quite a hardcore question.
What was the question?
If I understood it right, you're talking about basically a waterbed effect, where it's great that we're getting all the Kenyans' incomes going up from 160 to 1600, but there's got to be a waterbed effect where the West then reduces demand even more if we're not going to go over climate change limits, etc. Are you really asking that question? That's like you're like trying to pick a fight. Okay, so I can take you down to the map. I'm totally. You'll be so bored, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to do this as a display of virtuoso being boring. The answer is, we don't know. We don't know. And there's reasons to be gloomy, but there's a couple of reasons to be cheerful. And okay, so I talked at some probably sickening length about the twin pillars of Fordism, fossil fuel and mass production. Yeah? So if you were to dream up an emissions maximizing system, like Heath Robinson, that's what you would come up with. Yeah, especially with like manufacturing of desire as well, for rapid throughput of these products from these vast long print runs, it would look like mass production. But if what you're starting to see happening is right, then you've got a couple of shifts. The first is from mass to micro-production. And it's not just the sexy 3D printing stuff. It's basic computer-driven precision manufacturing, which is putting making back into the hands of people. And the second, of course, is from fossil fuels to renewable. Now, the impact of the second clearly is good news on the carbon side, if and when it happens. When will it happen? Will it happen? Well, it's probably going to be a big pain in the UK and the US. But if you look internationally where the real population growth is happening, we know that by 2030, 80% of the world's population is going to be in countries where renewables are below cost parity with fossil fuels. So at some point, fossil fuels will start to become a niche market and renewables will start to be abundant. And there'll be a point of acceleration where, as that happens, governments realize they can dare to start subsidizing renewables because it's no longer a political liability, because there is a cost competitive alternative. So I'm actually, whether we will have catastrophic climate change events that put the drawbridge up before that point, I don't know. Okay, so that's on the renewable side. The second, is everyone still alive at this point? Okay. The second, on the mass to micro stuff, and who knows when this transition is going to happen, who knows how. Airbus is already 3D printing its belt buckles, saving 3.3 million litres of fuel over the lifetime of a jet. The really interesting thing is that transition, it has multiple benefits. Of course, it's from mass production to micro, i.e. long run to short run, so there's reduced materials waste. Of course, with a lot of the 3D stuff, it's from subtractive, shaving away the material, cutting out from the steel, to additive, where you're printing exactly the materials you need and no more. And it's, of course, local as opposed to internationally shipped production. So you've got three positives there. What the total mix is going to be, what the total net is effect on the waterbed, I don't know. That was a good answer, no? That's all right, I tried. I thought the basic answer was, as I began with, I don't know. Please.
Sorry, we have a question from the US actually.
Oh.
So which cities do you think will be the most exciting opportunities for young professionals over the next 10 to 15 years?
Whoa. I think you've got to go for decay. Go for where there are unsolved problems. Didn't work for anybody. I've got like no audience response. Okay, let's define excitement then. Go for cities that are not shaped like cars. Go for cities where there is friction, density of exchange with people. So, that may well be old European cities. Barcelona, there's amazing stuff going on in Barcelona, where he's got this, where the deputy mayor, this guy Anthony Vives, has got this vision of the energetically self-sufficient, productive city, replacing the product in, trash out city. I think Detroit, for the people in the US, is anyone from the US in Detroit there? They can't speak. Maybe. I still want to go. But I've heard there's amazing regeneration stuff going on there. So I would look at stuff where there's problems, either where mass has collapsed, or where you've got just a whole series of unmet needs. So this is Lagos, this is Accra, this is Nairobi. I think these are the places where you're going to see, because what you need is intimacy with your markets. You need to understand what is going to work in that market and what's not. So go where the people are and where the challenges are. Go where the car is not. Total silence in the room. Please.
So you mentioned the need for businesses to adapt to their markets and what currently
Yeah.
and serve these customers. Do you have any examples of where PwC has helped a business do that?
Yeah, I mean, there is a brilliant program that we're doing, actually, called the Girls Education Challenge. A fantastic person in my team called Beth and a great set of people. And the job there is to empower women, and obviously education is absolutely key. And it's using, and you may say this is a challenge is using the platform of Coke. Using the platform of Coke and their challenge to reach 5 million women by 2020 to empower. That's a brilliant example. Across the international development, you've got a tremendous range of projects there. More. Please.
What was your inspiration initially to your work and that passion to existing?
Oh, God. I think it was fear and despair and hope. And yeah, just probably midlife crisis also. But apart, you know, I think you see this stuff around you. My first job was in Malawi, aged 19 or something. You see this stuff around you, and you know, either you're completely mute and sort of numb to everything, or you're not. And if you're not numb, and it's clearly messed up, then either you're going to go into despair, or you will try to see what you can do to contribute. So for me, it's all just been this, and then my next job's at the World Bank, in the Environment Department. You know, so it's all just I guess, trying to find something that has meaning for you, actually, in response to what you see. And then you get these moments of satisfaction that keep you going. That keep you going. Does that make sense? I'm not being very articulate, right? As you know, as you know better than anyone. Please.
There's been quite a lot of press about the imbalance of London and the UK as a city.
Yes. Yes.
And you see opportunities and changes for the balance of cities in the UK, or has London just got too big and it will stay too big?
I'm not going to plead the fifth on this one. I'm going to bite the bullet and give a meaningless answer. What I love about London is actually its deviation from the sort of monolithic entity of London. What I love about London is the fact that it's got these villages. That it's got, where I live in Brent, which has got Queen's Park, it's got these bits where there are people who know each other and connect with each other. And I think if London is going to continue to rock and be the city that people really want to live in, then it will have these villages. And you know, if you look at Bristol, we're just discussing now a project with Bristol to help them with their European Green Capital of the Year program. All these shifts in technology, if they happen, have got this extraordinary democratizing force. You know, we're at this point where technology can be used or misused. There's this great quote from Kentaro Toyama: technology is not the answer, it's the amplifier of intent. Big data right now can be used to mine us like battery chickens for our data, and we can receive nothing in the process. Technology can also be used to do these extraordinary things, like allowing people to be co-producing their own electricity, to be selling that power back to the grid. Another client who I was just with a month ago is the island of Albany, okay, which is planning to secede from under the jackboot of Guernsey, the oppressor. And Albany, which has got a population of all of 1,900, they've got a tidal basin there that will allow them to generate enough power for 1.8 million homes, produce a staggering amount of revenue that could turn back the tide of depopulation, start placing power back into the hands of people. And actually, of course, I'm not really serious about the independence, but give them their own state, their own control over their own future. These technologies can tear down the barriers to making the mass production erected. Mass production created this societal model where what we valued were expensive machines operated by very cheap people. This technology revolution could actually start to shift that, where what we have is ubiquitous and cheap machines, like the RepRap 3D printer is an open source, self-replicating 3D printer where it prints out its own other little baby 3D printers, open sourced. Okay? You've got ubiquitous cheap machines And the real differentiator, the real distinction, is the creativity of the citizens. And the city that thrives, and the company that thrives, is the one that harnesses, that captures, that catalyzes that creativity of the citizens. So I think the logic of the technological revolution, the shift from mass to micro-fossil fuel to renewable, is one that returns power to the local and gets us into a place where makers are sharing in the value of what they make. Which is a long way from where we are right now. Does that, by the way, does that sound like an attractive? Does anyone else share my enthusiasm for that future? That makes me happy. Makes me very happy. Please.
You spoke about this future in terms of PwC.
Yeah.
How do you feel as part of it is that maybe anything PwC does and very against you, or do you feel we're going
Okay, the really cheap thing would be for me to turn the question back on him. There is a huge tussle. You know, I sometimes feel like that bit between the tube cars that joins up the tube. That quite uncomfortable bit between the tube cars, or on the overland. Yeah. And the challenge and the discipline and the drama is not just to be a nut job, though you may say I failed in that one. Not just. The challenge is to be constantly ground truthing your vision, and your hopes, and your dreams with what the dreams and hopes of those around you, what the dreams and hopes of clients are, what the practicality is. So, you know, PwC is this unbelievable lab to do that. It's an unbelievable lab. You know, what I know about the place is it's got some really smart people who are really good at kicking bad ideas in the head. There will be the occasional good idea that will die, and that's your job. That's your job, just to push it and make it work. It's a bit like the Spartan process with the babies on the mountaintop. But you've got to be one of the babies, and you just got to go for it. And you know, if you're going for it, if it's real, and you're doing it with passion, and you've thought about it enough, you'll make it happen. If you've stripped out the other noise and you're focusing on that as well. So that's the challenge.
All right. I think, unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up because our TED Talk's coming up. So for the associates on the call in the US, thank you very much for joining. So we know that the sound might not have been the greatest, but we've actually recorded it, so we're able to watch the whole session on Spark, so look out for the video. And then Leo, thank you very much for coming and talking to us about cows and City of the Future. And hopefully see you again on the next quarterly day, maybe.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks so much.